Sindhur Pangal, what a treat to have you back on the show. Since we first talked before we did video and YouTube, you were the author of Dog Knows, a really wonderful book that other people in the field of canine behavior and sentience have referred to as being quite special. Your specialty is you are, I think, of the saint of the streeties in India. The streeties is what you call those dogs in the street, but you've been studying them in the way that many other Jane Goodall kind of anthrozoologists have studied animals by not interfering, just seeing what they do and how they are. And you have a really big problem in India right now, a looming problem based on the ignorance and perhaps other adjectives of the people in power, the politicians. Before we start to talk about the street populations of dogs in India and the function that they have and the importance of the good work done by many people over decades to keep them safe and healthy, you just came back this month from a harrowing situation in Sri Lanka. And what I'd love you to talk about a little bit, because in America we see something in the news, we think Sri Lanka, India, they're all the same. Pakistan, we don't know. And oh my God, they're having mudslides and cyclones. What's a cyclone? What's a typhoon? Oh man, they're all in the mud. You were there for a wedding. Can you tell us a little bit about Sri Lanka and its relationship to India and why somebody that you knew was getting married there? Were they Sri Lankan? Is that a place that Indians go to get married? I know nothing. And I feel so bad for the people there still mired in the mud and for you having been trapped there.
Yeah. So a cyclone is nothing but a hurricane. We call it a cyclone in our part of the world. And when it gets large enough, it gets named. So this is one of those things which was large enough. We were there for a wedding. The bride and groom picked the place because Sri Lanka is close to India. So there's a lot of shared culture. They wanted a special place. And we had family coming from all over the world, many coming from the US actually.
Oh,
And so they
nice.
wanted, yeah, so they wanted a nice, quaint vacation as well for the family. And so we went there. Little did we know that while we were in the midst of the wedding celebrations, we were actually in the eye of the storm. So it was the calm before the storm. It was just mildly raining. It was all pleasant. The weather was very nice. And then when it was time for us to leave, is when the skies opened up. It started pouring, and I was stuck in the airport for 48 hours.
But at least not stuck in the mud for
I was
48
not
hours.
stuck in the mud. And so I think there are a lot of little graces there. People who there were many who were stuck, who were unwell, senior citizens, people with babies. And we were stuck in an odd situation where our flight was getting delayed, but we had been checked in. And so we couldn't go through immigration to go to the lounge, kind of the area where there are all the restaurants. But we couldn't get out of the airport either because they have security there saying, no, you checked in. So we were stuck in a very narrow passage where all
Oh
the ticket
my.
check-ins happen. We couldn't get out of there. There was just one toilet, no food, no water. I felt like there was no air because there was so many of us. So I was panicking and I was getting very close to freeze mode. And then I found myself getting out of freeze mode by being helpful to those around me and looking at the saving grace and saying, hey, we're not drowning and we're still okay and we still have our health with us. And so helping others out. And so that's the lesson I've brought back with me because we're going to segue a little bit into the situation that's happening
Yes.
with the dogs, which also feels equally helpless. I
Yes.
find myself slipping into freeze mode sometimes, and I have to remind myself that the way to find my strength and power is to be helpful, is to rise up for others who have less than me. And so that's my theme right now. That's on my mind, so I bring it up multiple
It's
times.
wonderful. And the phrase freeze mode would be almost like going into catatonia. Is that something that you've seen in panicked dogs? Or is this something totally human? Because I imagine because you do observe dogs so much, is that what dogs do when they feel trapped,
Yeah.
terrified to the point of freezing?
Yeah, so we do see multiple different reactions. And so I am typically not somebody who goes into freeze mode. I am
Right.
somebody who goes into fight mode. That's
Yes.
and some there are dogs also who will either freeze or fight or run away. That's our first choice for many is to run
Yes.
away. So flight, fight, or freeze. And then
Yes.
there's a fourth one, which is people have called it fawning or fiddling. So there's a kind of trying to appease.
Yes,
And I think we all move between all of this. We all have a dominant one which we are drawn to. And then flight, for instance, is not always an option, especially for dogs, right? And
correct.
so when it's not an option for dogs, they can get into one of the other phases, which either can get misinterpreted, like freeze mode can get misinterpreted. We see it at the vets all the time. Dogs who you put them on the table and they just freeze up. And
Yep.
people say, oh, my dog's calm once he's on the table. No, he's
Oh,
frozen.
terrified. So
Yeah.
you're a canine behavior consultant and you got your MA from Exeter University in the UK and you're now an anthrozoologist. So you had all this wisdom already, honestly. It's why you wrote the book Dog Knows. But you're an important voice in India and also globally because you have this very unique group of free roaming dogs.
Yes.
FLD, free living dogs, is even better than free roaming. Roaming sounds like, I don't know, a hobo, but free living is, and the dogs in India, I thought they looked awfully skinny and thirsty, but that's just from a Western perspective. They were pretty chill. They weren't frozen. They were just lying in the middle of the street. I thought, God, they're so hungry and thirsty. They just need a power bar. But really, they're just like, this is okay. I can lie down wherever I want. Let's talk about rabies in India and this bizarre, which did reach the Western press for a while and then went away, of this bunch of judges. I'm going to call it a bunch of judges because I'm too ignorant to understand your judicial system, who arbitrarily said, yeah, we're going to round up all of the free living dogs and relocate, meaning euphemism, we will kill them all because of rabies, which is a deadly disease and it still exists in your country. Talk about how this idea came about and what you and other good-minded people are doing to try to educate these jurists, I guess they're jurists, and maybe the larger public about what those dogs need and what they do for society.
Yeah, sure. So first, let's just get a few things clarified. Free living dogs. I know a lot of people think that their quality of life is really poor, and so that the best thing for them would be to humanely euthanize them or get rid of them in some way. But I think it's important for us to recognize that many of our lives are less than ideal. It carries
Yes,
suffering. But that's not the only thing we carry. There are other things other than suffering also. These dogs, and I think I have sent you pictures and videos of the dogs outside my
yes,
house. They have great connections, they have friendships, they have
yes.
drama in their life. Uh, in some of the stories, so they are invested in their own lives. And so it's not fair to think of their lives as dispensable just because one part of it has a certain amount of suffering.
Yes,
Uh, and I akin it back to I myself have been through my fair share of struggles and suffering. 4 years ago, I lost my husband. And
yes.
I live in a country where in India, many years ago, they thought if I had lived here 100 years ago, they would have thought that my life was not worth living anymore. And there was a practice of burning widows.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the kitchen wives that were burned because they weren't doing good cooking for their mother-in-law or good slaving.
No,
Actually, wow.
yeah.
That's a
Because
great
the lives
analogy.
Yeah, the lives of women without their husbands was considered worthless, too difficult to live, and so too perilous, and so therefore not worth living at all. And I think this mistake has been made even with, for instance, British India looking at people in India and saying that their life is, India went through multiple famines during the period of colonization. So if you look at pictures of people from then, you will see the suffering,
Yes,
but none of that means that the life is not worth living. And
correct.
so I think that we need to recognize that there is more to life than suffering. Now, and that's been much of my life's work, is trying to put forth what else happens there, what other things go on in their lives, and trying to show to the world the drama that goes on, the joys that they experience. There are so many caregivers who look after these dogs. And I'll talk a little bit about how they're showing up for these dogs. They're willing to put their bodies on their line for these dogs, feed them, sterilize them, vaccinate them, so on and so forth. And this is our story. This is our story of
Right.
India, our
That's right.
dogs and our people and all of
That's
that.
right. That's right.
Yeah. Now, what has happened is in August, there was the Honorable Supreme Court decided on a suo motu action, which is there wasn't really a case, but based on incorrectly reported newspaper article that incorrectly reported a child died of meningitis, but got incorrectly correctly reported as died of rabies. And
Oh,
this false reporting was picked up and acted on by the Honorable Supreme Court, and an order was passed that all the dogs in New Delhi should be removed immediately and put in shelters. Now, there are not enough shelters, they
no.
simply don't exist. And the kind of timelines that they're asking them to build them in, it's not possible. And so there was pushback. It looked like better sense prevailed. So the ruling rolled back a little bit. And then on November 7th, the court doubled down again and made it national and rolled it out to the entire country.
Wow.
Now, this has multiple repercussions. One is, of course, we're talking about the impact it's going to have on the lives of these dogs itself, whether it's ethical to do this, because we know, like you said, this is euphemism, they're going to die. We know that's what's going to happen. So the ethical implication of that. But there's also the human angle to this. One aspect of it is, of course, rabies. Now, with rabies, in the last 2 decades, India has done great strides in reducing rabies. We have gone down from 20,000 cases to 5,000 cases, which is a significant
Yes.
reduction. So we've dropped rabies by around 70%, dog bites by around 50%. But this has been done by systematically sterilizing the dogs so that we stabilize the
Yes.
population.
Yes.
And then we vaccinate them and get 70% coverage so that we get herd immunity.
Yes.
And that's how we get rid of rabies. And WHO, the World Health Organization, recognizes this. And now this is their recommendation for the entire world. Now, if you start removing dogs from this, what's going to happen is you're going to break the herd immunity because every ecosystem has the ability to sustain a certain amount of life. So if
Yes.
you remove life, new life moves in. So
Yes.
new dogs can move in, and other animals can also move in the interim period. Other animals include rats, snakes, mongooses, so on and so forth. They are also carriers of rabies and other diseases. And there's a
Yes.
scary part. The other diseases can be plague, leptospirosis, or even novel diseases. Let's not forget the
Yes.
last pandemic was given to us by a rodent in the sky, which was a bat. Now, if we
Interesting.
have new exposure to rats bringing in novel diseases, this is very scary. Add to that, India is now extremely high on our antibiotic resistance. So we are able to carry
Oh,
diseases at a pace that very few countries do. So it's going to turn into a hotbed for diseases if this comes through. But not only are we going to create this damage in the short term, it also creates a vacuum effect and a rebound effect. So the populations rebound. So the new set of dogs that come in usually come in twice the number. This time they are no more vaccinated and they are new dogs. So they are no more familiar with the human beings. Human dog
right.
friction goes up, dog dog friction goes up. And the point that we're trying to make is when the British Raj ruled India for over 100 years, they tried to cull these dogs and get rid of them, and the dogs have gone nowhere.
They're still
Getting rid
there.
of the dogs this way does it, they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to be coming back over and over. There's a sensible way to do this, and there's a knee-jerk reaction way to do this. This is really not the right way to do this. This not only creates room for a rebound of diseases. We have case studies. I think there's a case study in Bali where an entire village, the dogs were removed from an entire village which did not have incidents of rabies. But once all the dogs were removed, is when rabies came in. This is
Yes.
because the new population comes in. So not only are we increasing risk of rabies and dog bites, we are exposing ourselves to novel diseases. And the last Point that I also want to make, which we shouldn't forget, it's unfair to forget, is the number of people who have shown up for these dogs, who continue to
That's
show up for these
interesting.
dogs.
Yeah,
They are the ones who have been paying from their own pocket to
yeah.
feed them, vaccinate them, so on and so forth. And we know that there are studies that show that humans and dogs bond in very similar ways as a mother and child. It's oxytocin mediated, the chemicals are the same, the attachment styles are the same. So, separating these dogs from these human beings is like separating a mother from a child. And so, the distress that you're going to cause in such a large population, this is not something a country should be doing, the leaders of a country should be doing to members of their country, that to the caregiving members of their country.
The people who are the most St. Francis, they're using their own time, their own energy, their own money, which is substantial. In a country of so many people, there are probably hundreds of thousands of people
Yeah,
doing this
yeah,
animal protection work, dogs
yes,
mostly, and
yes,
they they should be celebrated. They should be
yes,
studied as, ooh, how do we get more people in our society to think this way? Because you have a lot
yeah,
of people suffering too, right? So if you
yeah,
had more of an empathy that was encouraged in your country, not let's eliminate the weakest and the poorest. Let's support them, let's protect them. And each one of us can make a difference. That's an interesting thing in India. We don't have the cat people in America, the TNR feral cat population people, many smaller of them, and they also put up with a lot of social scorn for protecting in the same way, trap, neuter, release, and then feed these colonies. And by the way, with cats, the same thing has been found around the world. Remove a cat colony, and more wild cats or more feral ones come in with all the problems you just finished eradicating. So it's an
yeah,
exact parallel. But those people are precious resources in a society that's very much, how am I feeling today? What have I got? What's in my bank account? What's in my fridge? As opposed to who out there needs something? Oh, this makes me feel better to do that, to take care of them. And
yeah,
that's a really important part of your society. Because if it didn't have empathy, it was interesting when you said suffering is part of life and there's more than the suffering. But if a dog, I'm not going to make this analogy to the very poor people who also don't have resources, but if a dog from puppyhood has not very much water or fluids and not very much food, that's their norm. We may look at it from the eyes of people that have cans to open and bags of kibble to open as, oh my God, that poor dog is suffering. The dog has only known that's his or
yeah,
her life. So being hungry is just a normal condition, like the sun is shining. And you get the food where you can. And as you say in the report you've made, you and the other people fighting against this really absurd, provenly absurd law that has got to be stopped, that it's it's just really it's difficult for people who are the right thinking people and the kind people and have science on their side to see this kind of misinterpretation of what those dogs' lives are like. And as you say, the people who interact with them and are there as part of the fabric of your society. And rodents, you bring that up in your report. Mice and rats are a danger to human society, whether it's destroying your food sources, destroying your other hard goods, or bringing diseases. Hantaviruses, mice, there's all kinds of diseases that they bring, some of which could be evolving, and rats have survived a really long time. So they're
yeah.
going to outlast us all, but the dogs keep them in check.
Yeah, that's why I call the dogs a biobuffer for us, because
Yeah.
we can vaccinate the dogs, we can sterilize them, we can stabilize their population, and we can vaccinate them, and it's very easy. But that's not the case with rats. The dogs, the dogs on my farm, outside my farm, the way I caught them to get them neutered, to get them sterilized, is I put my arms out and I said, "Come here." And they
Running,
came running and jumped into my
running.
arms. I'm not going to be able to do that with a rat or a snake.
Yeah, the rats, the rodent population. I've never heard bats referred to as rodents in the sky, but that's how plague came. That's how plague was spread.
No, COVID was from bats.
Oh, yeah, but I wonder
Yeah.
about old plagues back in the old
So
plague days.
we did have in India, we did have a case in Surat, though it has not been studied and proved, but the coincidence is too dangerous to ignore, which is that the dog populations were dramatically dropped by a systematic cull, following which there was a natural calamity. Now we live in a day and age of earthquakes and cyclones, and
Yeah,
it all ties back together. You see how it's happening
that's right.
back to back? And so I think there was one of those at the same time. And meanwhile, the rat populations had just gone up silently that nobody knew about. And when they were hit with this calamity, bubonic plague kind of spread.
Interesting. Came up and out.
Yeah.
It's hard work what you do, but this one has got to be easier. It helps that you already have international standing as a dog expert. So that's important. And then you have other scientists who are public health experts. The idea that that the free-living dogs in India pose a threat to humans is misunderstood. And this, as you called it, the honorable high court, is that, do you have to use the word honorable even when they're doing something
Supreme Court.
dishonorable? So the
It
honorable
is the
court, it's the
highest court
full
of the
name.
country. It's the Supreme
And you have
Court.
to
Yeah.
say honorable. We don't call anybody honorable in America, but we're a little more rough and tumble. You have that British background where there's a little bit of tipping of the hat to people who've been there before. How does it look? What is the prediction of whether this very bad ruling can be stopped?
Quite honestly, I'm finding it hard to predict anything at this point because this was so unprecedented. And what I'm hoping for is, and I do say honorable Supreme Court judges because they are experts on the law. But my hope is that they understand that they're not experts on ecosystems or dog behavior or public health. And my hope is that they're going to include these experts in the conversation to take a decision that is right for the country. Include, for instance, rabies experts who have done systematic work in managing to eradicate rabies in pockets of the country with such excellent groundwork. They're out there catching the dogs and documenting everything and tracking data and publishing papers in peer reviewed journals. There's such excellent track record from India. The animal birth control program itself was one that was offered as a more sensible,
Yes,
humane, and viable solution by India to the world. It's a
that's
gift
right.
of India to the world. The wonderful Dr. Chinni Krishna proposed this and got made this happen in 1959. And the paper that I sent to you was co-authored by him as well, and the rabies
Yes,
experts as well. So my hope is that they will look and listen, and somewhere better sense prevails. But quite honestly, the way this has happened, I don't know if that's going to happen, which direction it's going to go. However, the side effect of all of this is there have been non-stop protests in India from November 7th.
wonderful.
People are not letting up at all. Today, I got a message that our General Post Office has received 150,000 handwritten letters to go
Wow.
to the Chief Justice of India.
Wow.
And this is just the beginning. And so I think it is really awakening something within people to claim space. And I'm just humbled by this, that these
Yes,
people can rise up and show up every day. They risk being arrested, they risk
yes,
being, India doesn't take protests very easily and
that's
protesters
right.
very easily. They are putting their lives on their line, their bodies on their line, to show up for these skinny dogs.
That's right. Skinny dogs who might appear to be suffering, but they have great other qualities in their life. And I think it's a
And they
great
have an
lesson
army
to all of
standing up for them.
They do. They have an army of two-leggeds standing up for the four-leggeds. Sindhur Pangal, it is such a pleasure to talk to you. You are so calm in the face of this storm, and you were also in the one in Sri Lanka, which who knew that was a place for destination weddings? We're all learning something new every day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your wonderful book, Dog Knows. It's a great book, and anyone studying dog behavior should definitely get a copy of it. I know you'll come back with some good news sometime soon about how the good people of India have prevailed. Thank you so much for your time and your passion on behalf of everybody. Take care.
Thank you.